Hi, everyone. My name is Wes Field. Really lovely to meet all of you. Met some of you in the back, but hope to meet all of you after. Thanks so much for having me. I guess I'm a founding engineer at Forge, which is, I'll tell you all about, which is a kind of seed stage, but growing very quickly, OpenAI and Founders Fund kind of backed company, building living software. I'll explain a little bit what that is. And then before that, I was at Palantir, a place that maybe some of you know. It was very kind of like non-traditional journey, I think, but I think a lot of people are like that in San Francisco. I started out not in software or AI or any of that stuff at all. I started out, I wanted to be a bioengineer and I wanted to build things like artificial hearts and biomaterials and those kinds of things and lab work. I kind of realized I sucked at lab work, turns out. And ended up kind of going in, starting to go in a software direction in bioinformatics, which is like really bad Perl scripting to date myself at the time. And so I started off my career post grad school working at genetics companies. We did a carrier screening for genetics, basically like if thinking about they didn't even have a whole genome sequence in the time. We used microarrays that like fluoresce different colors. So I started working on software to do genetic testing actually, and see if people don't have if they have a risk for being carriers of genetic diseases. So I worked at a company that did that called Recombine very early in New York. From there, I kind of traversed the startup landscape. I worked at a protein engineering company out of Caltech, very small. That was in kind of the days of AlphaFold, like the first version of AlphaFold. We were doing kind of first principles physics-based software, and kind of realized that the future would be machine learning. I think I remember hearing Jensen Huang, who you probably know who that is, in 2015 saying all software engineers will end up being teachers of machines. And that like really hit me very, very hard, especially in the company that I was working with at the time doing protein engineering, because I was seeing, oh, like we're not going to be able to like these first principles computational methods are like kind of hitting a wall and have been for some time, but machine learning will be like push us over that wall. And so from there, I wrote like a bunch of grants and built protein databases to like try to aggregate all the protein information that labs were publishing, because they didn't actually used to publish it in GitHub repos like they do now. Is actually like pretty shitty. So we started like putting together all of this protein data and releasing it to the public, and begging the government for money to fund it. So that was fun, and I got to work with a bunch of really smart people, a bunch of Nobel Prize winners and people much smarter than me doing that. So that was amazing experience. That took me into the world of pharmaceuticals. So I went from working at very like small companies to realizing I did not know how a big company worked. And we were always trying to like actually commercialize things and failing pretty miserably to big companies, which was very painful, and something you all probably will face. I think ironically, like I never wanted to get any type of business degree, but you end up getting one through osmosis no matter what. If you're trying to be successful, you like cannot avoid it. And so you'll probably, if you guys don't already have business degrees, you will also attain that in your life, whether you like it or not. And so then I went into a very large pharmaceutical company to lead a machine learning team, a company called Amgen, and they're massive. And I was out in LA and worked there for a while, building software and leading teams of data scientists and machine learning engineers. But it was a little bit boring. Like it was pretty slow. I started to kind of like get an itch to move faster and kind of go, I had some pain in the startup world, but maybe the retreat into a massive company wasn't really the right move either. So I think I made some wrong decisions. And I met some of the folks at Palantir, and just saw the software that they were building, and wanted to use it to run clinical trials, because I was running like building ML stuff for clinical trials at the time, and got to know them, and made the decision to join Palantir, and to kind of like try to build out the life sciences business, which I honestly think that it's easier to sell software to the government than it is to pharmaceutical industry. So would avoid, well, actually, I won't be a hater. Maybe some of you will be like very successful in pharma. I don't know. But yeah, so at Palantir, I really kind of got immersed in this thing called forward deployed engineering. Has anyone heard that term these days? Yeah, probably if I had said that, when I joined Palantir, if I said forward deployed engineering, nobody really knew what I was talking about. They were like, "What is that? I don't understand how it's different than a regular engineer." So, forward deployed engineering was like, going out to the field and building products and trying to solve a particular customer problem, not sort of kind of sitting in a room and, and trying to think about product market fit of some great idea, but going out to a factory floor or to, some office building in Ohio or to, Palantir help build airplanes and, and building software for that. So, I ended up doing that. And that was really transformational and sort of like, I kind of realized that like the way that we had been building stuff, in my startup career was probably wrong. And like the way that they were building software was probably right. And So that's what I ended up doing. And then I started life science was hard to make work commercially. So I fortuitously ended up meeting a bunch of people in finance, and I built a vertical at Palantir in private equity, which was kind of boring at first, but then all at once was exciting because you kind of slogged away in internal software for portfolios and accounting, which was like not that fun. But then the portfolio companies that they oversaw were actually very very cool and differentiated, and you could go in and build cool software, and you could do really valuable things, I think, to transform those companies and make them more efficient. And that business really took off when we realized that. So that was really really cool to be a part of. Spent about almost 4 years at Palantir doing that, and then. About 6 months ago, I decided to go on another startup adventure at a company called Forge that I'm really, really excited about. That I think is going to be that I know is going to be a generational software company. I think I know what one of those looks like now, and we're building kind of what I think will be the next generation of software that will be much more malleable, iteratable, and software that needs to be production grade but needs to be regenerated all the time. So I can tell you a little bit about what Forge does. Forge, basically, we kind of focus on automating the most long-tailed processes that exist in businesses. So a lot of people ask us like, "Oh, are you guys an agent company?" We're actually not. We don't do agents at all. That's like the very very popular thing in software right now. We kind of take the opposite approach. It's like not kind of like an agent there to help you write an email or do customer service or something like that, which I think is very popular right now in the Valley. But but basically an automation that could be hundreds of steps long. In businesses, there are these massive, and this exists in all businesses, these massive SOPs that basically hundreds of humans follow day in and day out. And this is like very rote, but very laborious and very long-tailed, highly precise work. So you can think of like, how do you underwrite insurance? Or you can think of, if a fraudulent actor, how do you file like an AML investigation on them? Like if I'm a bank, how do I resolve a dispute if someone steals your credit card? Well, it's actually like people think it's like all automated in software, but it's really not. It's hundreds of people that do that day in and day out, and it's like millions of hours spent on like just one of these processes. And so Forge really wanted to tackle that problem, which is extremely complicated. Usually involves like tens of internal systems and external tools, and be able to kind of like automate the interactions between applications. And we really think of this as like a new type of software that will actually kind of like fill the gaps that exist in every company. And so it's just an incredibly it's like the most exhilarating 6 months I've had in my life, where to go from basically where a product barely exists to now being deployed in production and in F500 businesses, and using that business degree a little bit again as well at Forge. And the company's headcount has doubled since I joined, which is just like unlike anything I've been a part of, even at Palantir. So that's been really cool, and that's what brought me back to San Francisco. Actually, I lived in Texas, so I've much like y'all, I'm getting a lethal dose of San Francisco, over the last 6 months. Weird billboards, like, that don't make sense to anyone unless you live in San Francisco. But yeah, that's my story. That's kind of what Forge is working on. And um, yeah, I'd love to take some questions or talk about whatever you guys want. Yeah.
Can you chat about the founding team of Forge?
Yeah, sure.
Kind of the big role players, what's their story, how did they come up with the idea, and how did you join?
Yeah. So it was just a couple people when I joined. Marky, our founder, CEO, she is a Teal Fellow, so the classic path of drop out of Stanford, and then I think that's a great sign for Peter. That that's what he likes, and she, with her Teal Fellowship, actually instead of uh, building a startup or like most people do, she built a consulting company because she didn't, I think very wisely, was like, I don't I shouldn't be building a software company until I really deeply understand like what is needed. And so kind of did her own forward deployed engineering adventure into a bunch of different companies to advise on AI, and realized that AI couldn't really do anything at that moment in time, and got early access to GPT-3 and realized that it was going to change the way that software worked. It wasn't quite ready for when she built the kind of like first kind of toy demo. It didn't really quite work, but that the models would get good, and then this type of software would be will be ubiquitous, and it will change the way that all software is developed and produced. And so the different kinds of roles at our company are very. This is our company is very different than Palantir, but it is similar in this way. You kind of have like core engineering and then kind of forward deployed engineering. And the role of forward deployed engineering is to like win out in the field and build like the hacky version of the thing that wins, and then that is metabolized back into the core product by kind of the artists that are the product engineering team. And it's like almost there's no sales team. There's just those two things kind of like working in tandem to iterate on a product really quickly and try to build the best product. So that's basically the only two departments in Forge.
So what convinced you to join them? What's the thing that stood out?
Yeah.
That they reached out to you? Like I like to hear what, because coming from Palantir.
Yeah, I get the question. Okay, and I've been thinking about that a lot. So here's what I'll tell you. Like, Palantir is an insanely amazing company, full of very highly ambitious people who are the best in the world at what they do. And when people ask me the question, basically, I think they'll make a movie about Palantir, right? It'll be a really cool movie. It'll be super compelling. There'll be lots of stuff about it, like going to work for the government, hunting terrorists, like, starting several other very successful companies, almost failing many, many times. The people that, have been there since the beginning are super hardened by those experiences. And it kind of made me want to like be like them, I think. And I know they'll make Palantir the movie because they're already making like the second, Facebook movie. It's like, Hollywood's always out of ideas. They're gonna make it, right? And so, but I didn't join a company to be famous, like it would be a movie star, but it does kind of make you think like, what role would I play in Palantir the movie? And it would probably be like, engineer number 4, like nonverbal. That would be like, like he'd be in the back, he'd be there when like the stock went up and like everyone. But even that part of the movie is like not that interesting, right? It's like the fun reward at the end of the movie. But like all the main characters are introduced in the beginning. And the interesting part of the movie is like kind of the beginning and the middle, not like the montage that they have of everyone getting rich, right? Like that's cool, but it's not, it doesn't really make you one of those. It does in a certain way. I'm very transformed by those experiences, but it kind of made me think like, well, what role could I play? Like, and when, and so when I saw what Marky was building at Forge, I was like, one, I found it so compelling, and that that was part of it, and I thought to myself, well, if like a really successful company really really early doesn't look like this, I don't know what it looks like. And so you only get like so many of those chances, I think, in your life to kind of like those eureka moments. You're just like, yeah, I'm gonna shove all in, and it's like and when you leave a big successful company, you do walk away from a lot. So that's like sometimes a hard it was a hard decision for me to make, but I'm really really glad I made it.
So just follow up quickly, did they reach out to you, or did you reach out?
I was introduced via a friend, and then we had talked for 30 minutes on Zoom. I had no idea what she was talking about, and I kind of dismissed it. And then we ended up fortuitously meeting again, but I think it was kind of designed now that I'm looking back at it, like all of these things are, right? The powers that be are tilting the pachinko game, right? And it was a founders fund like company, so obviously like knew a lot of the same people, and they were probably the ones tilting the wheels there. But and I just spent 2 days with her and pretty much made the decision like then. I pretended that I didn't, but I did, right? Like yeah. So that's how.
You talking, you just mentioned it now. Can you talk about some of the things you thought of when going from Palantir to Forge? Like, there's a couple of trade-offs. You've got some unique insights there.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like you're betting. Like, I mean, not everyone is. I don't think you should be motivated by money. Like, I think, but everyone has like certain, equation of things that they're trying to put together. Like, is it going to be worth it? Is it a big risk? I'm going to leave somewhere stable. It's a great company too. Like, Palantir was the best company I've ever been a part of up until that point. But I think, again, like. Whatever your motivations are, building the best thing, working with the best people, becoming a billionaire, whatever it is, like I think all of those things are sort of downstream of doing the most interesting thing. And if you just kind of focus on doing the most interesting thing at any given point, like that will usually fulfill all those other things. And again, like not to use another metaphor, but it's like what is the most interesting next chapter of your life? It's like you're reading a book, and it's like great, like the Palantir chapter is the most interesting next chapter, like the same thing. For me, it wasn't, and I think I try to think about that more and more and more. I've also noticed, I'll just opine a little bit longer. Like I started working with people at really big companies that had really big titles, like SVP of XYZ, CEO, of the whole company, and the massive, and that's great. But what I observed about most of those people, not all, but most of those people, kind of like, as they get older, I feel like they take less and less risk. And the thing I've noticed about people here, maybe that's what makes this city unique, is like, Steve Jobs said, Silicon Valley or, SF or whatever is like the only place where nobody penalizes you for failure. But I noticed like people here, like they keep doubling down. And even as they get older, they take more and more risk, which like I think is very inspiring. So I wanted to be, you can't just like be inspired by that and then not do that, I think. Yeah.
Can you talk about, just out of curiosity, how much of a challenge and how you guys think about observability?
Observability? Yeah, I think we're like a very AI skeptical company, which is like not exactly your question, but I kind of take it in one direction. And so we had to, I'm going to be talking about interpretability, I guess. Like we had to build software primitives for our automations that were highly precise, highly interpretable, and also a bit AI skeptical, even though we use a lot of AI. We got one of those big model, thank you for spending so much money with OpenAI, right? Like, but like we had to build software that was like very like has full provenance, has full interpretability. Why every single thing was done. Everything has to be logged and saved because you're making like thousands of decisions a day, and these decisions, like the things that we automate, are actually like very consequential to these companies. Like they will get audited and they will be on the line, and so they have to show that to regulators, for example, and all of these things. So it's hugely important, and we thought about that like foundationally to kind of the product that we were building.
Can you give an example of what Forge does? It seems vague.
Sure. Yeah. So basically, we build what's called a runbook, which is a series of software primitives that do a process end to end. We're actually like a process company. So you might think of it like when people see our technology, they kind of think about like, oh, this is kind of like UiPath. Of course, it like works totally differently, but you're automating the interactions between other software applications, whether that be like, oh, type into this, extract, do some data manipulation, call some APIs. But basically, that's what humans do all day at these companies, right? Like they just like they go for 10 applications to process like one credit card dispute, for example. It's like, hey, if your credit card gets stolen and you report it to a financial firm, this is what they do. They go through a giant process. And the reason that they do this and they haven't automated it all is because traditionally code is really bad at process, because process changes really a lot, right? So that's why they throw people at the problem. So they'll have hundreds of people, sometimes at like BPO, they offshore like half of it because it's too expensive to even do it here, because that's how many hours go into it, right? So those are the types of things we automate, and that's why everything that we do like at a different company is different because their process is different. So we have to translate the process that exists into an automation that then you can scale and run at superhuman quality. Basically, that's what the company does. And these things are massively valuable because like companies spend 8-9 figures a year doing this, and that's what a lot of like human work looks like. So I think like what Marky would say, and she opines on, like, you know, when Satya Nadella says like we have to get to 10% GDP growth for AI to be like consequential, that's actually like the stuff that is that, right? Like this kind of stuff that's very, very painful for companies to do. So that's what we do. Is that like a little clearer?
It's a clearer idea, yeah.
Yeah.
So for every company, you'd be like the forward deployed engineering approach. You have like a set team that goes into that company and creates an entire vertical for everything.
Everything.
Interaction in that
Exactly. Yeah. For like a massive thing that they spend money, like big OpEx thing, basically. Like, yeah, it's like, hey, we have 300 people doing this thing day in and day out. It's complicated. There's a lot of people doing it. Could you automate this? And how? You have to build we have to build a very malleable product that's really forward deployable to be able to kind of do this new, unique, bespoke thing that's very valuable to them. One of the cool things about Palantir that I learned there too was like one of the reasons, like, you know, if you went and pitched like, hey, I'm just going to build a small company that automates this one thing, that specializes in this one thing, like this one SaaS thing, and you can pitch to venture capitalists, they'd laugh you out of the room because there's no TAM for that, right? But if you could build the meta thing that could kind of fill all those gaps, so you have like an unlimited TAM, because like because that's the valuable stuff that actually people haven't done yet in companies. If you think about that, yeah.
How like tailored versus general? Like how tailored is each individual company's implementation of like their software?
Totally new. Yeah, that's why like we have no sales team and we only do forward deployed engineering, because. But again, that's the valuable stuff. It's like the stuff that you can't buy off a shelf. Like you can't go, you know, you can't buy everyone has a CRM, right? Like like another CRM that's slightly better. It's just, I don't think that, like, you know, compelling. Yeah.
Who takes IP of that new? How is the IP split amongst the?
Yeah, basically, like they own kind of the automation that, you know, is produced. It's like a platform as a service, right? So all the core stuff is our IP. But we're not a modeling company, so we're not like training on their data and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Could you maybe explain, maybe not like a day-to-day, but like kind of a general process of how you would then like actually, you know, be like that forward deployed engineer?
Yeah.
You go to the company, et cetera, to the point where they have this product now.
Yeah, totally. So I mean, basically how it works is like, you know, you convince them to take a chance with you. You show them, you know, hey, like we've done this before. It looks a little different because your process is unique, and we'll prove that to you in a very short amount of time. So we'll do a pilot for like 2 months basically, and we can automate this thing end to end in 2 months. That's what we say, and then, you know, and then you kind of show it to them. You present that it actually works. They usually care that it hits like above human quality. Like you can do it better than a human. It can do it at scale, and it can do it cheaper, right? And so those are the things that we're trying to prove out. Palantir is like kind of was similar too. It's like you build really, really quickly. It might not be perfect, but it's 70% on the way there. And then, you know, they don't have to like die before going to Valhalla, right? Like they don't have to just like believe that you can do this. They're like, oh no, I can see that this will work. And now, you know, we can like, you know, actually take it into production. So then it's like the production phase where you're going to scale it up. You're actually going to kind of change. You're going to kind of replace a broad swath of their process. And you're trying to earn the right to do more cool things because there are usually more problems at the company. So it's kind of like it's like the opposite of the Biggie Smalls. It's like more problems, more money type of thing. Yeah.
Productizing a consulting service is very hard. What is your secret sauce to do? I mean,
Yeah.
how can you go from solving one single problem for one single company to a product?
You have to be really, really rigorous about metabolizing like all that. I think this is a Shyam Sankar line, who is our CTO Palantir. Like you have to metabolize plain, excrete product. So like you have to. It's not just like you're just deploying it and not like bringing kind of the core learnings and into the software. You're trying to create more and more software leverage by kind of having this spin cycle, right? Where every deployment should get easier, even though it's doing different things, because you've started to build these core primitives that then make a very, very robust product that can solve a lot of different problems. So I think it's like they had this riff of like, why is the food at a French restaurant so good? Well, it's because like the waiter could take off his apron and cook in the kitchen if he had to. So I think that's the whole trick of forward deployed engineering. It's like that's what you're getting at. It's not a consulting company. It's like it's a real product development motion. You know, like you don't want to be a services company, right? Like you don't want those. But if you actually earn the right to get like the access to the coolest problems at these companies, whatever it may be, you will build a better product.
What's the team size right now?
Yeah, right now we're 15.
So how does that scale? Is it like one person per company, and what's the exact time? What are rough average timelines?
Totally.
And then how is it going to scale? Are you guys automating the forward deploy part? So
Yeah, actually, like now like because of the trellis of framework we built, like we can generate like 60% of our code now, even for custom stuff, is automatically generated. You have like an intelligence on tap, right? Like this is like the easiest it's ever been to kind of do this kind of thing, right? And by next year it'll be 90%. And so we built all the ways that happens. It's very interesting. But you asked like how do we scale? Yeah, I think generally when you're like our forward deployed like unit is kind of two people. At Palantir, we call this an echo and a delta. And we kind of found that this was like the right way. You have one person, they're both technical people. One is sort of like has more consultative skills, and one is like purely kind of your cracked, as the kids like to say, builder person. And because like it's really hard to be out in the middle of the wilderness with no one else. It's almost like spiritually hard to be there just for yourself. You kind of need two people. And it's like, yes, one person probably could do it all, but like they always kind of get cooked when they're alone for whatever reason. It just doesn't like, you just need a friend, I think. And so like, that's what usually deployment looks like. Now, the echo is the more like people person, I guess you could call it, but they both should be very technical. The Riz and the Tiz, right? Like, or whatever you got. And it is, but I think that's actually the reason that Palantir like produced so many good founders, because like that, it's kind of that. Like, you except when you're a founder, you have no product leverage at first at all. Because it's like the light version of that. You're like, yeet you into the wilderness, and you guys will figure it out, right? So we're gonna scale that team. Now, I think like the Echo, you can usually take on multiple things. While the Delta, the cracked one, the real builders, like pretty locked in on like doing that thing for that customer.
So those two engineers.
Yeah.
They like there's this new client, this new company.
Yeah.
What are like average timelines between starting and finishing?
Yeah. The thing is, you're never really done if you're doing a good job, right? And I think that's kind of what you're getting at. But that's like a good thing. Like, it's good to like have a customer for 20 years that like, because you will have this amazing relationship where you've created so much value, and they have like actually paid you quite a bit to kind of keep solving new problems. Like, it's not like a traditional software deployment, but I think that's good. And a lot of people like used to think that was bad, but like they're learning that like that kind of model actually gets things done in their company. So it's also kind of a good thing. So yeah, to give you like numbers, like it's like 2 to 3 months to prove something out usually. Then like the next phase of it is like maybe you're gonna go do like multiple things for a year, and these are very valuable things. And then in production, maybe the third phase of it is like, I want you to go automate my enterprise, and then that might be more than 2 people, right? And it's probably a much larger contract, and that's like the marriage, right? It's like dating. You're kind of like or you go on a first date. Then you're sort of like more take it to the next level. And then if you do really well and they love you, then it's kind of a marriage. Yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of like related to your startup.
Yeah.
What do you think of Palantir? Like, as a company, like the things that does Palantir? Yeah.
What do I think about Palantir? I think I think 0 to 1 is like is the best book of all time. Right, and a lot of that it's just like so true, and a lot of that is about like Palantir basically, I think it's one of the greatest companies of all time. I think you have to have like such a powerful mission, and I think they had a very powerful mission when they built that company, and yeah, so I couldn't say enough good things about it. Yeah.
And what do you think was the mission? Like,
save the West. That's a good one. That's a banger. Like that's a good one. Yeah. well, not just America, but America's a big part of that. But yeah, no, actually, like the commercial product started in Europe, which is like it's crazy. Like now, it's like people like you could never build a commercial product in Europe, but Palantir actually did build their commercial product in Europe. So, not just America. Yeah.
Can you talk about how you guys think, like how does deployment and infra look like for you?
Yeah, that's been an evolution. Like we went from like running things locally on a laptop and having a bunch of laptops. Like that's how crazy. Like it was like 20 laptops. Like I'm not even making that up, right? Like and because like actually when you one of the cool things is you can still do that at Forge because like that sometimes that's the easiest way and the quickest way to start from a security perspective. Like they'll send you a laptop and they're like, okay, here you go, you're a contractor and like you have access to these things and that's it. So we actually designed our product, which is really cool. Like that's actually how it was very different than Palantir. Palantir would like need all these data connections and it would ship a big build environment called Foundry, which I don't know if any of you used, but it's an amazing product, but it does still like kind of need all these things to get going. The cool thing about Forge is because basically we only need the same credentialing as you would give someone that's doing the work. So that's really cool. Like because of that sort of approach, like we can move really quickly. So then on your infrastructure question, that's usually what we do for a pilot. It's like, we don't need to queue anything. We have a cloud queuing system and we're on a security journey, having to kind of completely isolate it and, meet very onerous security requirements to process these things that, do have, the customer's data in them. So all of those things, you have to go through that pain. And we built a lot around that, but it didn't start there. So it's been, you kind of, it's like, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Like you just have to start chewing kind of a thing. But yeah, that's kind of the evolution and where we're at right now. Any more questions? Thank you guys so much for having me. Thank you.